Welcome, everyone, to Live Lessons. Glad you're here. It has been a warm, humid day here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you so much for spending your evening here with us. It's going to be a great night. It's Jazz Month, and we're honored to have with us the great Howard Alden.
Glad to be here.
Howard, thank you so much for being with us. It's a thrill to have you be a part of all this. Let me tell you all how this is going to go. We'll be doing some giveaways a little bit later on. Also, if you're interested in being a part of the chat, what you need to do is log in at ustream.tv, and you can log in there, and then we'll see you in the chat. You can be part of the giveaways. And also type in your questions for us as we go throughout the broadcast. If you can, go ahead and type in where you're from. That's always fun for me. I see San Antonio, my hometown.
All right.
Staten Island, New York. Arkansas, Massachusetts. Oh, here they come. British Columbia, Wisconsin.
My God.
North Carolina, Quebec, Connecticut, England. All kinds of great. New York City, Glasgow, Scotland. Portugal, Lisbon. Oh, there you go. Lisbon, Portugal. Very good. I'm thrilled that you all are here. It's Jazz Month. We have had just a fantastic month of learning about jazz guitar, and I can't think of a better person to have with us than Howard for all of this. Howard, can you get us started off with a song?
I would. I'll play a little thing by Django Reinhart that I enjoy playing called Tears.
Tears.
Starts out minor, but it gets happier later.
Beautiful.
like that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And that was by Django.
That was by Django, one of his early pieces. Yeah.
I've never heard of that before. That's
yeah.
what a gorgeous piece. How did you get started playing guitar?
You know, I heard some jazz records around the house even before I started thinking about the guitar. When I was 5 or 6, I came across some old 45 RPM records, and there was one of the Benny Goodman quartet, one of the Count Basie rhythm section, a couple other odds and ends, and I just was drawn to the sound of that swing, jazz type of thing. It kind of had the sound in my head.
Yeah.
And when I was 10 or so, I started to see things on television. Remember the old summer show Hee Haw?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I used to see Roy Clark and all these different guys playing the guitar, and it just fascinated to see them playing, especially to see how Roy Clark was able to handle that guitar.
Yeah.
I just kind of started looking, was drawn to it, and found an old 4-string guitar in our house that belonged to a relative, just a very small tenor guitar. And started just kind of messing around with it on my own, and showed enough promise that my parents took me to the local music store and got me lessons.
And did you grow up in a musical family?
They weren't musical. They liked music, but they weren't musicians. They just had some records around the house and were very supportive.
And you grew up in California?
Huntington Beach, California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and the amazing thing is, I went to this local music store in Huntington Beach with this 4-string tenor guitar. Said, "Hi, I've got this tenor guitar I'd like to learn how to play." And there was an old guy from St. Louis named Charles Shortino, who had gone to California, retired. Said, "Yeah, come on in, kid." And he had me tune it up in fifths, the way a tenor guitar is usually tuned, which is the way the old tenor banjo was tuned. And right away started teaching me how to read music, how to play melodies, chords, tunes, and stuff. And after a month or so, I said, "There's a 4-string banjo in the house too." He said, "Bring that in next week, kid." And before I knew it, I was playing the tenor banjo.
Yeah.
But through that, I learned all the old standard tunes of the 20s and 30s, and was able to go out and start performing and stuff.
And you were how old around this time?
Around 12.
Wow.
I was playing pizza parlors, shopping malls, things like that.
Yeah.
And through the Banjo Society, I met a gentleman who was a part-time amateur jazz guitarist who was also hanging out playing the banjo at these things.
Yeah.
And I was over his house one day, looking through his records, and I was looking through the names I knew again. Benny Goodman, Count Basie, things that said jazz. He said, "Howard, I'm surprised you're not listening to my jazz guitar records." I said, "What's jazz guitar?" I never heard of that. He said, "Well, here, I'll show you. Here's Charlie Christian."
Yeah.
This was the first electric guitar player. This is Barney Kessel, who's a great player. I fell in love with Barney Kessel's playing.
Yeah.
This is Django. He's an amazing player. Look at the picture here. Look at his hand. He's only playing with 2 fingers,
That's right.
And Tal Farlow, listen to this guy. He played all these notes, and he had these big, long fingers, you know. So he gave me an education in jazz guitar at like age 13.
Yeah.
And that I just started following and learning all that
it.
stuff, yeah.
And I'm sure George Van Eps was around there, and he was one of your mentors.
That's right. There was one record of George Van Eps. He said, "Listen to this." He plays 7-string guitar. Listen to all the harmonies he's playing. And I always studied George's music, tried to learn his harmonies and his playing on the 6-string, and miraculously, years later, had the chance to play with him first and then record with him. I never actually had the pleasure of studying with him, because about the time he started performing again in Southern California, I'd moved to the East Coast, to New York. But the head of Concord Records suggested that, I mentioned George in the liner notes of one of my first albums. I said, I played this one little solo piece by George Van Eps, one of my idols. I would have been happy just to carry his amplifier.
Yes, that's how it works.
Yeah, and the head of Concord Records, Carl Jefferson, who recorded all these other great guitar players, Joe Pass, Herb Ellis, Jim Hall, etc., said, "Hey, that was great. I like what you said about George. Why don't you call him up and ask him to make a record with you?" I said, "No, just call him up. Sure, I'll do it." And
because he was out in California.
He was in California, yeah. And we wound up making one CD together when I was still playing the 6-string guitar. It went so well, we turned around and did another one 3 months later. And by that time, sitting next to George like this and watching him play, all of a sudden it made me click, said, I have to play 7-string.
Yeah.
So that was 1991.
If you're not familiar with some of these names that we're just tossing out, these are, these are the jazz guitar greats that have gone before us. George Van Eps being one of the greats, and he was really the first one, I think, that kind of made the 7-string guitar popular in jazz.
He's really the first American he didn't even know about the seventh string in other cultures. He just got the idea of adding the seventh string to enrich his chordal playing around 1938. He took his guitar back to Epiphone, had him solve the neck, and put a seven-string neck on it.
So that it was for his playing. That was his idea.
Yeah, it really was. He really originated it in American popular music.
Well, let's talk about seven-string guitars. It's tuned like a normal guitar.
Yep.
And then the lowest string is what?
In George's tradition, it's a low A.
It's a low A. So it's an octave below the fifth string.
Exactly.
And so you get this added depth and a fullness and richness that you can do with that added seventh string. You do bass lines and all kinds of things that he would do.
Basically, one of the starting point on that is basically you take any chord that has a root on the fifth string, like a D ninth. It's the same chord shape. You just reach over two strings, and the root is an octave lower. So, in fact, on that first tune, I sort of tried to demonstrate that. The opening phrase was. The next time I play that. So it just gives you like a deeper range for your bass notes, and also gives you a nice tenth on the bottom of your chords instead of this.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Almost like a piano player with his left hand, going.
You would think, I know, in looking at it, that a seven-string guitar would just be it would just completely be foreign to your hand. But because that seventh string is mirroring that fifth string, it's actually not as strange as you would think. Anything you could do, like Howard was saying, anything you can do a fifth string based chord, D minor, F minor, anything that would, something like that, your finger is already in a position. All it needs to do is go up a couple of strings, and you're at the octave of that. And I didn't even think about the thirds turning into tenths. That's
exactly
fantastic.
And the other nice thing is by increase, it's not so much the extra range so much. You only have 5 more notes there or whatever. But the fact that you can play a voicing up here and have the whole harmony in one place, like instead of having to go like this, and you can play nice full sounding things in flat keys as well as guitarists tend to open strings. So you can play in the flat keys that a lot of jazz players play and still have a full sound. So,
gorgeous. Some of the things that you were doing in the first song of these little passing tones that are going in between these various chords. Talk about that. Talk about how, rather than approaching a jazz song kind of linearly up and down, here's a C, G minor 7, C7, F, or whatever. If you add these inner lines to it, it creates all this wonderful movement and complexity as you're kind of going in between these various chords.
That's true. That's something that I really you hear in a lot of jazz musicians just listening to piano players and stuff like that. But my first guitar teacher I mentioned after I was self-taught for a while was a guy named Jimmy Weibel, and one of the first things he had me was starting to take all these standard guitar chords, which we're used to, and really taking apart, really seeing them broken down into the parts. Like first he would have me do things like this, just to see that it's like 2 sets of like sixths.
That's a C major 7th. He's on regular 5th string C major 7th form, movable form.
And then he would make sure you're aware of like where the root is, the 5th, the 7th, the 3rd, and then have you move those tones. Like take the 5th add. Yeah, so he would do all kinds of wacky things, like raise the 5th, lower the 3rd. But it really gets you to start seeing this as like a set of voices rather than a grip.
Rather than a picture.
Yeah. And what I do a lot is I'll do a lightning fast lesson here. I take these 1, 5, 7, 3s.
Right.
Instead of playing I leave out the 5th, just play 3 notes. So you have a C major 7th without the 5th. You can play that up the scale.
And just muting out that 4th string.
Right, muting out the 4th string. And what it does is it frees up a finger to move a voice if you need to. So a very simple device is just to take the sevenths down to the sixths on every chord. Or down a step in scale.
Oh, wonderful.
And once you get used to that, you can elaborate on it. Yeah, so that's just that one little idea. You get so much mileage out of that.
Yeah.
You know.
Fascinating. Talk about your guitar. This is a Benedetto 7-string
It is.
guitar. Tell us about that a little bit.
This one is a fairly new guitar to me. I'm really loving it. I just got it last August, and I've been playing Benedetto guitars since I started playing 7-string in 1992. And at first I usually had, because I'm not a large person, so I usually had smaller guitars, 16-inch body guitars that I played for years. And then for a long time, because I was traveling so much, I had Bob make me an even smaller guitar, which he now calls the Bambino.
Bob Benedetto.
Yeah, Bob Benedetto, I'm sorry. Had him make a guitar which originally was like a 14.5-inch body size.
Body size being the distance up and down this way. So if you're a smaller person, like this is actually a pretty large guitar for me. What they're talking about, the different body sizes, it's not the width, that's something else, but it's just how big this cavity is here. And sometimes I had a Guild Jumbo for the longest time. Hated the thing. It was given to me, it was supposed to be the ultimate guitar. I just couldn't play it because I was just like this the whole time.
That's what I felt about the 17-inch guitars myself for a long time. I was very comfortable with that smaller guitar. It was smaller. It was easy to fit in the overheads and airplanes. It was easy to travel with. And then just a year or so, I got a yen to just get a nice, big, old, honest acoustic sounding guitar. And Bob was nice enough to make this for me, and I'm just enjoying playing it because it's very satisfying to play just acoustically. And it just it has a beautiful resonant sound.
It does.
And amplifies nice. So this is what I've been playing pretty much constantly since last August.
What kind of pickup does it have in it, do you know?
I believe it's made for Benedetto. I believe it's made by Seymour Duncan. He's been making Bob's pickups for the last 6-7 years or so.
And you've got a volume knob, I see you adjusting underneath your pick guard there.
And this is new to me too. I'd usually was used to the traditional knobs in the body, which I could grab easily, and I thought I'd give this a try. I'm still fumbling around a little bit with it, but there's a volume and a tone there, which I...
Oh, there's a tone there too.
Yeah. I'm addicted to having a tone control there in just a case.
Now, is there a Howard Alden model of the Benedetto guitar? Was there at one time?
There was very briefly. Fender had an association, I'm sorry, Bob had an association with Fender Musical Instruments for about 6 years, where they were making his designs, licensing them under the Fender company. The Benedetto line was being made by Fender. And he made a few signature models. He made a Bucky Pizzarelli signature model, 7-string, which was a 16-inch laminated arch top. And he made basically the equivalent of the one he had made for me originally, which he now calls a Bambino, which was basically the 14.5-inch laminated top guitar, which, again, I played constantly on the road for about 6 or 7 years until I got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
There were about 4 7-strings made and about, I think, 4 6-strings made, and then about a week later, Bob left his arrangement with Fender and started his own company down in Savannah.
Yep, down in Savannah.
Yep.
If you ever have a chance to go down to Savannah and take a look at Benedetto, they make wonderful instruments. Great folks over there. Had a question. Stefan from Krakow, Poland, asks, how do you exploit the 7-string or use the 7-string? Do you extend or double the bass range? Oh, he's asking whether it's the bass or the treble. Well, it is the bass. He said, can you present us some examples of how the 7-string can be useful? Do you ever do moving bass lines and use the...
I do. Well, I tend to do a lot of, in accompaniment in particular, I use a lot of walking bass lines with the chords added when possible, a la what Joe Pass did so elegantly years ago. And a lot of times I'll just play only bass lines too. I just got more uncomfortable with that range. I play a lot with a singer in New York named Jean Geese. We do a lot of duo material. And she worked for a long time with only bass sometimes, and so she likes to sometimes just hear a bass line. And it's good for me, you know, like... So that's one way I use the 7th string a lot. It's a little extra range, just gives you a nice fat sound. You get used to playing your bass lines there. Also, another nice effect that George Van Eps used a lot too, again, utilizing those 10ths, is almost like a stride piano effect, using like either a 10th or on the bottom. So that's one thing I like to do a lot with it.
Gorgeous.
And also after I played it for a while, after about 6 months, I found the 4th string again. I was kind of lost for about 6 months. You know, it seems like only one extra string, but when you look down at this when you first start playing, it looks like 10 strings all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So, but eventually, it slowed me down for a while, but eventually I started just like taking some of the bebop tunes I played and just trying to play in the lower register, almost like a baritone sax or a piano in the lower register. So I found that really taught me a lot about using that range. That type of thing.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun to do every once in a while.
That would be, I could understand it, I could grasp it, and just looking at doing the chords, because you can kind of relate, you know, the 5th string and the octave there, but pulling off single lines.
You got to jump around a lot.
You got to jump around a lot for that.
For that extra 5th instead of a 3rd. And I just started forcing myself to learn some of the things I'd playing for years on the upper register, and getting used to playing down there and getting my responses used to where the notes were.
It's amazing how you can adapt as a player to the instrument that you're wanting to learn. 7-string guitar, I was just sitting here thinking, I was reminded of Pierre Bensoussan. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a acoustic guitarist. He's been on the show. It was 7 or 8 months ago. He was the World Guitarist of the Year, according to Acoustic Guitar Magazine several years back. Early on in his career, he got familiar with Dadgad and never looked back.
Yeah.
And learned all of his theory in Dadgad tuning, so his guitar wasn't too normal. He learned all of his chord voicings in Dadgad, learned his single lines, and it's just, the sounds that you're able to create when you grow up with something, when you just kind of start experimenting and learning it, as opposed to me, who looking at that, well, I could fake a few things, but getting so familiar with it that you can get creative with it is the key, I suppose. Yeah,
just getting comfortable with it and finding the things that are more useful. You know, it's the way the 7th string originated, at least the story I heard in America. George Van Eps, there was a guitar player, an early jazz guitar player named Carl Kress. Back in the 20s
George
and 30s.
Barnes,
He originally was a banjo player, a 4-string banjo player, and then he started playing the guitar, and he tuned his guitar like the top 4 strings of a banjo tuning, which was this.
So what are those notes?
That is, I'm sorry, instead of E, it's a D.
Okay.
D, B, just like the guitar, G, then a C below the guitar D.
Okay.
That's what they called the plectrum banjo tuning back in the 20s. So almost like 5-string banjo, but not quite, just another strange tuning. And then going down from the C, his extra 2 strings, he used a F and then a B flat. So on his 6-string guitar, he went down almost as low as the 7-string guitar that I'm playing. And he had a beautiful full. He played a lot of guitar duets with Dick McDonough back in the 30s, and then later on he did the things with George Barnes. Had a beautiful full sound. And back in the 30s, George really loved that sound because he liked harmonies and stuff. And he was thinking about doing that tuning. And his father, Fred Van Eps, says, "Don't change the tuning of the guitar. It's better, you know, you can't mess with that." So that's when he says, well, okay, if I can't retune it, I'll just add an extra string and get those notes.
Fascinating. Had a couple questions coming in. What gauge strings are you using? Or also, are they flat wound or round wound?
I'm using 12s, 12 to 52, just a standard jazz, medium heavy, I guess, whatever you call it. And the low string, I've been using always an 80.
An 80.
80, and I use nickel round wound strings.
Round wound.
Yeah.
Do they all come as a set, or do you have to buy that other
I
one?
get a 6-string set, and I add the 80.
How do you just do a single string, buy a bunch of single strings?
Just a single string. When I first started playing 7-string too, George was nice enough to give me my first 7th string. Ah, thank you, George. And at that time, for a while, Diodario was making a string which was an 80, and it said, recommended as the George Van Eps with 2 P's. They misspelled his name,
Yeah.
but 7th string. And they still make it. It's still in their catalog. It's an 80.
Well, it's starting to see where you'll see sets of them. I saw a set Benedetto. Bill from Benedetto graciously sent me a Benedetto set that was round wound, and that had the 7th string on it.
Yeah.
The difference between there's flat wound and round wound. Do you want to give the explanation of that, or I can do that
You
as
can
well?
do it. I'll let you do it.
The normal strings that you have, okay, those would be flat wound. The round wounds are the smooth ones.
No, the round ones are the
Round wounds are the normal ones. Okay. The round wounds are the normal ones. The flat wounds, they have a string that is kind of wound on the outside, so there's no ridges on it. And it gets you lose a lot of the highs, the presence of the sound, so it'd be terrible for bluegrass and things like that, but it is great for getting the warmth and the richness of a jazz sound. So check them out. It's always fun playing. They feel very different underneath your fingers.
Yeah, very so you don't get all this finger noise, which is nice.
Yep, yep. Had a question coming in. How do you decide which bass tones to play in the walking bass tunes that you're playing? Let's say we have a progression, like a 1-6-2-5 in C, just to make it simple. What bass notes would you choose as you're going between something like that?
Well, initially, I always start out with just the roots of the chords.
Okay.
Like, and if I'm playing like 2 beats on each one, you could initially start thinking C, C, A, D, 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 D. Now, you can either connect those notes. It's almost like connect the dots.
Yeah.
Now, usually to go into the next tone, a common jazz thing is to approach it from a half step above.
Right.
And you could try approaching from a half step below too. And that's a starting point. Now, once you play for a while, sometimes you find more creative ways to kind of connect the dots and get to a strong tone. I just always try to have a strong root of the chord on the strong beats or the important places, so you don't get too lost.
Right.
Like I might, instead of starting on a root, sometimes if I'm playing with someone, I might start on the 5th. Then you can get a little more abstract as long as you know where you're going.
Yeah. They want to hear you guys play together. Was the little note that came up to me. Well,
it's
all
about
right.
time.
It's about time. We had not really thought too much about it until this afternoon. I thought, oh gosh, we probably should play something together. So I just grabbed right out of the real book. We've talked about the real book. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. I grabbed a song by George Shearing, Lullaby of Birdland. It's in F minor. And let's see, I'll play the melody and we'll just
Sounds good.
play a little bit. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
that was fun.
Wow, making me break out a sweat up here as we seemed like we got faster and faster. That song got more complex the further we got into it. Fantastic. Man, so many good questions coming up here. I'll get to those in just a second. Garrett, keep those up there. Tell us about what amp you're running through right now. What kind of gear are you using? You're just going straight into the amp at this point.
I am, yeah. I'm using a little AER amplifier that was made in Germany. It's a lot for years. A lot of people have been using, particularly in the gypsy jazz field. It's very portable, easy, clean sounding amplifier.
Yep.
And I actually just got this one recently because it's so handy to travel with. And
It's just so small.
And I have a voltage switch on it, so I actually took it over to Holland with me last week. Mm-hmm. It's small enough I can actually put in a suitcase and travel with it and know that I have something.
And you have been out of the country for a while. I looked at your schedule today. You are a busy player.
Thank God.
That's better than the alternative for those of us who play a lot. You've been over in Germany and Holland.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How was that?
It was great. You know, I do a variety of things. Earlier in the year, I spent almost 6 weeks in northern Italy and Germany, and then mostly the UK. I was in England a lot. I generally go to England about once a year, sometimes twice a year, playing with local rhythm sections and a couple of great guitarists over there I team up with sometimes too.
Yeah.
And in Holland, it was actually a week-long jazz workshop that I've been doing for a few years in a row, where people come spend a week in a little hotel and we work, study things during the day, and have dinner, and then everybody jams at night, and stays up too late every night. So
Yes, that's the good stuff.
yeah,
That's the good stuff. That's where you really learn,
exactly.
is
yeah.
in environments like that.
And so, what can
And
I
you've
say?
you've been back here, flew right from Holland right in and landed right in the Chet Atkins convention here last week.
That's right. From a bunch of people playing traditional jazz and saxophone players and trombone players and pianos to 100 people sitting around playing Travis picking and playing all these great tunes. It was quite a change of pace and, really fun.
I know we've kept you busy. Is that the first time you've been to the Jet convention?
It is the first time. I've heard about it for years. Some friends of mine have been coming down here, so I was delighted to finally get down here and be part of it.
Well, I was thrilled that we were able to work that out. Our good friend Chip Henderson, who's been on this show as well, connected us both and said that you were going to be in town for that. So I was excited that we were able to get you while you're doing that. You've got a couple things coming up. I noticed that you've got you're going to be doing a guitar workshop at Groon's.
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow
at 1 o'clock.
If you're in the Nashville area, it's free from 1 till 2:30, if I remember right, at Groon's Guitars, at the new location of Groon's Guitars here in town. And then Ed from Just Jazz Guitar Magazine said you're going to be in Roswell, Georgia, coming up the end of the week.
Roswell, Saturday night. It's a series he's been writing down there called Six String Social Club. Somehow they fit me in too. I'm gonna have to cut a string off, but I'm doing a solo guitar concert down there Saturday night. It's location. You can look it up on either my website or just Google Six String Social Club, Roswell, Georgia.
Yep. Yep. Fabian, if you're in there, we've got our link for that. I haven't seen you in there, Fabian. Are you in our? Fabian's our moderator. He is there. Okay. And then just heard that you have put together a house concert here in Nashville for Friday night.
Right here in Nashville, yeah. Just some friends came up with the idea the last couple of days and put it together. I'm going to be doing just a small house concert along with a great singer who lives in Nashville here, Annie Selleck.
Annie Selleck.
Who I actually,
Classic.
we toured together with one of Mark O'Connor's groups like 7 years ago and had a great time, and I hadn't seen her for years. Went to hear her last week and sat in with her, had a great time. So I'm looking forward to sitting around and playing some tunes with her. I'll be playing some solo guitar. There'll be some vocals, and and maybe there might be some surprise guests. You never know.
You've had such a remarkable career over the years. Played with Dizzy Gillespie and Clark Terry.
Yeah.
Of course, George Van Eps, Howard Roberts. Did I hear you say
Howard Roberts was just a great mentor to me. I went to one of his seminars when I was about 17 years old and studied in his courses. Was a student at the GIT the first year it started, and wound up teaching there for a few years before I left for the East Coast. And
really?
He was just a great influence, a great guy to be around. So many pearls of wisdom, and a great sense of humor too.
What are some of the most memorable musical moments you've had, big or small?
Well, God,
You've played so many things over the years.
Yeah, a lot of great moments. Of course, I've had the pleasure of playing in some of the big halls like Carnegie Hall, in New York with various ensembles, which has been thrilling.
Wow.
Actually, one of the biggest thrills I have to say is playing with George Van Eps. And I'll tell you, one of the most special moments with George is I'd gotten together with him and recorded with him a couple times. And we'd done a few gigs in the States together. He was at like 80, 81 at the time, and I was
old at that time.
So I was playing gently, trying to give him plenty of room, not push him, just let him, because everything is a little slower and more relaxed. And then I was able to book 3 weeks in England in 1993 for the two of us, a series of clubs and stuff. And the first couple of nights we're playing all the nice things we recorded. It's very beautiful, and everything he plays sounds like a little string quartet on a guitar. And it was probably the first time in about 25 years that he actually played the guitar every day in a performance situation. And there's a big difference between even practicing at home every day and actually playing in front of an audience. All of a sudden, that third day, his chops kicked in with a vengeance, and he was playing the most unbelievable stuff. It was like a monster unleashed. I just kind of stood back, and he's just tossing off all this amazing stuff. It was really thrilling just to be with him and watch him do that and see him just so relaxed and so you know, there was surprises every night. you know.
Yes.
It's very thrilling.
All right, we'll let Howard take a rest for a moment while we talk about some resources. Wow, I hope y'all are enjoying it. There's so many questions that I have at this point. We'll try and get to some of yours that you're having on there. Today we sent out our newsletter, so you should have got our newsletter in your email box. Part of that was our jazz guitar resources. Each month I try and put out some resources of just things that I think are great. And we talked to the folks that make them and able to get some good deals on them. This month, since it's Jazz Month, I wanted to put out a couple of the best jazz resources that I've come across in the last little bit. One of them was this great book called Creative Chord Substitutions for Jazz Guitar. Are you familiar with this by any chance? By Ed Arkin.
I am not.
This is an older book. This book, I can safely say, changed my life. I picked this up at a music convention in Texas in 1983. And it's since been redone and repackaged and things like that. And it's music theory, jazz theory, from the perspective of a guitar player. Usually you have it from just a pure theory or possibly a piano perspective, but you don't have it from a guitar perspective. So what was great is it has all the chord diagrams and things like this. I remember going to class as in high school, and I have a little binder, and I would write out his chord blocks, and I'd learn a new form. Oh, that's a C major 7. That's a different way of doing a C major 7. I never thought of it doing it that way. I wonder if all those little things that make you think, you know. I wonder if I move all of those chord tones up a whole step or up to the next chord tone, and I end up with a whole family of chords. And he just opened my eyes to all that stuff. A great book. Creative Chord Substitutions for Jazz Guitar. I cannot find him. I don't know. He dropped off the face of the earth, never did anything else that I can find. A great resource. So that's in our resources for this month, as well as the Real Book 2. We did the Real Book, I don't know, half a year ago, something like that. There is the second version of the Real Book, which has great tunes. I think there's probably 300 plus tunes in here as well. Lots of great tunes that you would know. And it also comes with the play-along CDs, which is great. I would have never even gotten out of my room in the summertime had we had play-along CDs for the Real Book when I was in high school. Anyway, Volume 2. Y'all loved Volume 1. This is Volume 2. It has great songs in it, and it has the play-along jazz resources with it too, so you can play along with this really hip jazz quartet as you're playing along and learning songs. It's a great resource. Check it out. We've got all kinds of deals on those. That's the center button. If you're looking at us on Ustream, there's a blue button. That goes to our monthly resources. Check them out. I think it's just like $15 for the jazz guitar book. Excuse me, for the Real Book, and all of the 12 play-along CDs with it is hours and hours of playing. I think that's $109 for all of that. So anyway, check them out. It's great jazz resources. So make those available to you. It's time to give away something. Our good friends over at Benedetto, I let them know that you were going to be here, and Bill Neal over at Benedetto sent me some great things, and so we're going to give away a couple of things. Couple of Benedetto things. First of them is a Cafe Benedetto DVD that you were actually on from a concert that quite a few years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Lots of fantastic players: Jimmy Bruno, Adrian Ingram, Andy McKenzie, Frank Vignola, Jack Wilkins.
Jack's on there, yeah.
Just ridiculous playing. Cafe Benedetto. Somebody's going to win this. The winner of this CD is Kocis, K-O-C-I-S, K-O-C-I-S. You have just won this DVD. Perhaps we could get you to autograph that before we go.
I would be glad to.
You haven't won anything, though, Kocis, until you email us at service@legacyinstruction.com and send us your mailing address, phone number, stuff like that, and we will get this out to you. I'm going to turn around and we're going to give away one more thing. Bill had also sent over a Benedetto t-shirt. Come on. regular old Benedetto T-shirt, glorious shirt. Be the envy of your neighbors. Extra large, so it's for a large person. The winner of this is Pedro Vilhena. Pedro Vilhena 7, Pedrovilhena 7. You have just won a Benedetto shirt, and send us your information though, so that we can get that out to you. We're going to take a break just for about 90 seconds. Get a drink of water here on the set, and stick around for the second half of the broadcast. Play a little bit more, and we'll answer your questions with Howard Alden. Stick with us. Hey there, Steve Krenz here, and I have some exciting news. We're finally finished with our brand new guitar course. You know, when we asked our students what they would most like to see from us next, it was overwhelming: fingerstyle guitar. So that's right, we've created fingerstyle guitar. Learn and Master Spotlight Fingerstyle Guitar is our newest addition to our line of guitar courses. This is the result of popular demand from our friends and followers, and I couldn't be more pleased with how it's turned out. You know, imagine sitting down with just you and your guitar and playing a solo fingerstyle arrangement of one of your favorites. You know, I created this course so you'll have the tools to do just that. We've got special guests, interviews, basic, intermediate, advanced lessons, and everything from traditional acoustic fingerstyle playing to arranging songs for solo guitar to classical jazz guitar, Merle Travis style picking with several stops musically in between. This is going to be a very thorough course, so get ready to take your guitar playing to an entirely new place.
Furthering your education, Legacy Learning Systems offers a unique resource to all students, the Learn and Master online community. Here you can communicate with fellow students and course instructors and immerse yourself into an interactive community where knowledge, fun facts, and experiences are shared. Signing up is easy. Take your learning to the next level. The Learn and Master online community. Your place for serious instruction.
All right, thanks everyone for sticking around with us. Let's get right to some of your questions. One of the questions that was asked were, what is a good resource to learn music theory for guitar? I know for me it was that Creative Chord Substitution book. Anything come to mind?
You know, there's so many. It's hard. There's so many books. It's, you know, one very good theory book that I came across years ago. It's really not for guitar, but it really explains jazz theory and music theory as applies to jazz. It's called the Jazz Theory Book by Mark Levine.
Mark Levine,
who's a piano player.
Yep.
And he does some very good explanations of just how different scales and harmonies function together. So a lot of very useful information in there. I remember that stood out. Other than that, I picked up a lot of useful stuff from Howard Roberts from his material. That's my recommendation for now.
Question just for me. On the Howard Roberts material, is there any place to get that these days?
Unfortunately, not at the moment. I think
I've searched and searched for that, and I know it's great stuff, and there's just...
Yeah, I'm not sure of the state. In fact, I was just with Howard's son out in Seattle a few weeks ago, Jay, who's putting together this great tribute project to his father with recording with a lot of musicians that played with him. And he's actually got a little school up in Seattle called the Roberts Music Institute. I don't know if shortly before he passed away, Howard did three really extensive volumes for advanced music over in Europe called the Howard Roberts Guitar Compendium, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and I think it's still in print. Those are really well organized. They're just sometimes I just look through there and find a couple of pages, and I find a really interesting idea and really clearly explain things. So I hope those are still in print. If not, someone should organize them or buy the rights and get them out or something.
Yes, you know, such great material.
Yeah, and the thing, Howard was he was really to the point. He was very concise. He could really explain things very clearly and very usefully.
Yeah.
He was all about material that you could actually use because he was a working musician his whole life. He didn't want just theoretically or a lot of busy work. He just wanted something that was useful right away.
I remember I picked up, probably at the same convention that I picked up the Creative Chord Substitution, I picked up a 3-volume set of George Van Eps. I think Mel Bay put that out. I don't know. It about that much of material, and I remember trying to go through it at the time, and I got about 20 pages into it, and it was hopeless.
Let me tell you a little story about that, because I was thrilled. Of course, I'd been a George Van Eps fan for years and had tried to transcribe a few things here and there. And the time those came out, I immediately went out and bought them all and took them home and started looking at them. And about that same time, I was still in California. I went to a NAMM show in L.A., and I happened to buy the Mel Bay booth, and there's George Van Eps talking to people. I didn't know him, but I just kind of stood by and eavesdropped. I heard him talking to people saying, I never meant for people to actually play all that stuff I wrote down. You know, I just got obsessed with writing down every possible variation I could think of. And he said, the thing to do is just open the book, and if you see a page that looks interesting, work on it for a while, and then close the book and put them away for a month or so. So I took him a little too literally. I closed the book for about 20 years.
Yeah.
But he really, again, he kind of put things into perspective that way.
That is helpful. I know that's exactly my experience with it. You look at it and you get you get this kernel of concept, and then 100 different variations of it. It was kind of like I know Ted Green's chord chemistry book. Same way.
Yeah.
Wow. There's knowing a C chord, and then there's knowing 7,000 variations of how to play it in so many different ways.
But about the same time, I had come across an out-of-print book of George Van Eps guitar solos in a used bookstore, just 6 original solos they published in the early 60s for 6-string guitar. And I started looking at those, and those were really wonderful. Because they were in a musical context. It had the ideas in the setting of a piece you could sit down and play for someone. And Mel Bay has republished that, I think, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Added tab to it. And that, like every 2 bars is a guitar lesson you can take. You can transpose in different keys.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you have a piece that you can play it and see how things connect. You know?
Another question. Any word on hand placement used when over the body of the guitar? Hand exercises that you use for reach and strength? I'm not sure if you're talking about your fingering hand or your picking hand. As far as hand placement you've got to drop your wrist, I would think, in order to reach those lower notes.
I've gotten the habit very early of always keeping the wrist pretty flat and not really dropping so much like because you're just creating tension there and stretching tendons. I really made a habit of just reaching a little further for that extra string. It's really pretty much classical guitar technique. And again, playing the 7-string prevents me from doing the thumb over, which is a very useful technique, and I've seen a lot of 6-string, not only rock or blues players, but jazz players use that. But I don't do that at all. I pretty much just keep everything even. I keep this as flat as possible. And keep basically a finger per fret. There. And the right arm, again, when I was playing the smaller guitar, I put my arm in a slightly different position. I've kind of gotten used to this now. So
just a normal teardrop heavy pick you're using there?
This is a very unusual pick. You know, it's you want to take a look. It's not.
Wow.
I started using that about a year and a half ago.
What is this?
It's made by a company in Spain called Guzman, or Guzz, G-U-Z-Z.
Garrett, there's no way you could get a shot of this. Is there?
There is.
Okay, we are going to try and get a shot of this pick. How do you spell it?
G-U-Z-Z. Guzz.
G-U-Z-Z. Do they have a website or something?
Yes. You can just Google Guzz Picks or Guzman.
Okay. It is a very thick, but it's got different surfaces on it. This black dot here is a rubber circle, so I guess that would help for gripping your pick. And it's also looks like it's maybe a 3 millimeter.
About
thickness.
3, yeah. I think a little more than 3 actually. And he makes a slightly thinner one now too. He calls this is called oh my God, this is called the S3, and he makes a thinner one called the S3 Skinny.
Thank you, Garrett.
I was on a tour about a year and a half ago with a bunch of Django-style guitar players. I'd been using another similar heavy pick, but not quite as big. And this wonderful guitar player from Spain named Bill Ballester said, "Oh, I told a friend of mine, could you check out his pick?" And I said, "Okay, I'll try it, to humor him." And I started playing it. It felt great, and I got a noticeable change of tone. It felt great. I've been using nothing since then.
Really?
Since then, on both the electric, acoustic, everything. He gave me one. He had an extra one. I hung on to it for a few weeks. I was able to contact Guzz in Spain. He sent me some more, and so that's what I'm using.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Okay, we need to wrap up and get out of here. Couple of questions, though. Geach, NYC, from New York City. Geach, you have waited 2 weeks for this question to be answered, so we'll try and do our best to it.
New York. All right.
Geach was asking about bebop scales and their application in jazz, and what a bebop scale is and how you would apply it. Fabian, I gave you a couple of links there. One of them is a good explanation video I saw of it, so you can put that up. Another one is a PDF explaining a bebop scale and how that works. Fabian, maybe you can put that up. I can't see if you're doing that, but put that up. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I'm not exactly sure what a bebop scale is, but I'm used to just doing a lot of extra half steps in my scale places. Do you have a? Well,
from what I can gather, it's a rather fluid sort of a thing, and it's a scale that you would, or let's say I'm doing maybe a dominant scale. Okay, so I'm basically. This would be a what? A C mixolydian there?
Yeah, C7.
C, D, E, F, G, A, B, flat, C. And what I'm going to add is I'm going to add some chromatic tones in between there just to kind of help it work out. This is a 7-note scale, so it really doesn't land itself well. But if you added an extra tone in there, C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, B natural, C, then you end up with 8 tones, and you can just see.
Good.
You end up with a scale that's a little bit more, have some more chromatics in it. But it's not just that between the flatted seventh, or you can put that chromatic extra note between various spots. So there I added my chromatic tone C, D, E, F, G, G sharp, A, B natural, C. I mean, I don't think of it that way as you're playing. You don't really think of, I'm going to use this scale here. You kind of think of, this is the tone I'm on, this is the tone I want to go to, and I've got 3 or 4 beats to get there. I need to add 3 or 4 notes in between them, so you just start throwing in chromatic tones to get you there.
Yeah, I always kind of instinctively did that too, just finding, and only just recently, a friend of mine, a guitarist in England named David Freeman, who's a friend of you ever hear of a jazz pianist named Barry Harris?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the foundations of his teaching technique is he does use those, he calls them, not the bebop scale, but he calls them, like for instance, a major scale. He adds a half step between 5 and 6. And he calls that the C6 diminished scale. Because, first of all, it's the 8-note scale, like you mentioned. Yeah. And also, what it creates is instead of when you harmonize it, instead of getting this, by taking every note of the scale and harmonizing, you get a C6, then a diminished chord, the next inversion of a C6.
Oh, fun.
And you can do, you can. So you're basically alternating major or 6 chords with the diminished thing between them. And forgive me if I'm going on too much about this, but it's a very useful thing because it's really applicable to the type of music we play because it gives you like a 5/1 resolution with your scale. And you can apply the same thing to a minor scale. Then you get what he calls the minor 6th diminished scale.
Yeah. Very interesting sound, yeah.
So that's just something to kind of put in the back of your head and think about. And just once you start messing with that, you can find all kinds of variations and ways to use that.
Fascinating. It is 8:02. We could go on for another half hour. I haven't even gotten to great things here. Another question that came in on line was Little Joe from Bossier City, Louisiana. this isn't a jazz question, but he asked about practicing, and I mentioned keeping a practice journal. It's a good way to keep just track of what you're doing so you don't get off base and stuff. And he said, well, what exactly do you put in that? Well, put in it whatever you want to put in it. Things I would put in it would be like, maybe some skill things that I'm working on. How fast could I do it before the wheels start falling off and I can't do it anymore? So you can kind of gauge your progress as you're kind of building skills and speed or whatever you're trying to do, whether it be chords or scales or pentatonic scales or whatever. Just log in when you practiced. That's a scary thing when you go back and look and you think, gosh, I went 4 or 5 days without touching my guitar. Put songs that you've been working on. I know I'll work up songs and then promptly 4 months later forget them completely. I don't know if that happens. You got to learn so many tunes that.
Absolutely, I think that's one of the most important things is to keep a repertoire and keep it current, keep it in circulation.
Yeah.
And go out and make sure you make other people play those tunes with you. If you have to carry around the chords or the music and say, if they suggest one of the 10 tunes you always play together, let's try this tune.
Yeah.
That's the only way you'll get away from just playing the same tunes over and over again.
Yes. Write down your goals. Write down what you would hope to learn, what you want to learn. I'd like to learn fingerstyle, or I'd like to learn to play like Tom Bresch or Howard Alden, or work on 7-string stuff. Write down your thoughts. This is one thing I do, is I write down course chord forms. I told you about that from different books. Anytime I find a new chord form, I go, I don't really think to play a C major 7th, like that. Not the first way I would think to play that, but it's a great little form. So I write down chord forms all the time. And write down things that you think. This is what I do. Like I'll write whatever. I found this form, and I realized that I could do it up here, and what if I did it in another range of the instrument? Can I keep doing that same pattern up in a different range? Just things that I would think. This particular lick works over a whatever chord. Things like that. Just write it down in your practice journal. Let's talk about one more thing. Just Jazz Guitar Magazine, the good folks over at Just Jazz Guitar Magazine, Ed Benson, sent me Chip actually was the one that got me familiar with this publication. This is a great magazine. You can look at it at justjazzguitar.com, I believe is the web address. Made out of Atlanta. This is huge. It's got like 160 plus pages in it, and it's got interviews. You've been interviewed with them many times and have had songs and things in there.
Yeah, put arrangements. I used to, when I did a series of 7-string lessons for a few years.
Yeah. They have all skill levels, interviews with great artists, great songs, exercises, gear, everything that's related to jazz guitar is going to be in this publication, Just Jazz Guitar. Check it out. Excuse me. We're going to give away. Ed graciously gave us a year subscription, so one of you lucky folks is going to win a year subscription to Just Jazz Guitar Magazine, which I believe comes out every 3 months. So it'd be 4 issues of that. The winner of this is Diane Black. Yay. Diane Black. You have just won a year subscription to Just Jazz Guitar Magazine. You got to email us, though, at service@legacylearningsystems.com or service@legacyinstruction.com. Either one of them will get to us, and we will get that to them, and they'll get this out to you. A year subscription of Just Jazz Guitar, the fine folks over at Just Jazz Guitar Magazine. And Ed said that he saw you over at the Chet Atkins convention.
I did.
Yep. All right, let's close it out of here. Howard's going to play one more tune before we leave. Couple of things I want to let you know. Our newsletter came out today. If you are not currently getting our newsletters in there, we have tips, and I do video tips and things like that. We have our resources to tell about upcoming events. We have our Student of the Month, which this month was Tom M. Tom Maddox from Decatur, Illinois, good friend who was here last week for the Chet convention. So Tom, I hope the paparazzi isn't bothering you too bad now that you're Student of the Month, but you probably should watch out for that. maybe get your phone unlisted or something like that. You're going to be rushed with interview requests now. So anyway, our newsletter's got all kinds of great things in there. Check them out. Fabian, you've got the link there. If you are not currently getting our newsletters, you're not one of the 110,000 that are getting our newsletters. On our archive page, which Fabian, you have put up, you can sign up for that, and we'll send them out to you. All right. I have in the newsletter this week, I put up a video tip on 251, kind of a jazz fingerstyle arrangement of 251 licks that you can use, and also talk about learning jazz standards since it's Jazz Month. Had a question up here. Steve, would you be up for showing up in chat in the near future for a live question and answer? Yes, I will do that. I will post it on. Can't do it tonight, but I will do. I'll post it on the discussion board, and we'll do a live Q&A. That would be great. Our recording challenge for this month is not jazz. We should have coordinated this with Ben Bob. Our partner for that is Gone Country. So anything country related you can do in our recording challenge. Get over your fears. Record anything. It's exactly what Howard was talking about. You need to build that skill of performing. Which is a different skill than learning and sitting in your room and learning the tunes and hashing all that stuff out. And next thing you know, someone asks you to play a tune and you freeze because you just don't. All right, you need to get better at the skill of performing. And so one of the opportunities we have to do that is the recording challenge. So post it up there, and you'll never find a more receiving audience of your work, no matter what skill level you're at. That's a great thing to conquer. Guitar events. We already talked about Howard's doing a guitar clinic at Gruhn's Guitars tomorrow here in Nashville from 1 to 2:30. And we already talked about the concert in Roswell, Georgia, and with Howard as well. So if you're in those areas, check those out. Our next live lesson will be July 30th, and it's going to be an open talk. We'll just talk about jazz stuff, whatever you guys want to talk about. So next week we will not have a live lesson. We'll be on the week after that. We've got some new lessons up at Gibson Skills House, which is the white button underneath your Ustream window. I've got a lesson up there, the money chords in C, great chord arrangements in C. I've got another style lesson, playing melodies with chords, power workout on major scales. If you're working on major scales, try and follow along with me as we're doing those 10-minute power workouts. Artist interview for this week is Rick Vito, our good friend Rick Vito from Fleetwood Mac. Talking about slide guitar, and I think in that interview he actually shows the guitar that he was using on the Bob Seger song Like a Rock when he recorded that solo. Some of the other folks have new songs coming up about as far from Jazz Month as we could get. They have Walk Like an Egyptian from the Bangles. That's the song that other folks are learning. So, all right, that's all of my announcements with all of that craziness. If you like our live lessons, please like us on Facebook. We have our Gibson's Learn and Master Guitar Facebook page, which is constantly going, and our Twitter feed as well. Hey, also want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Philip Meneses, good friend from San Antonio, Texas, who tonight is playing on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Wow.
And he's playing with a couple of groups there, and he'll be the rockin'-looking thin guitar player rocking behind him on The Tonight Show tonight. So check that out. That's a good friend, Philip Meneses. Philip, knock 'em dead. It's already happened. It was recorded earlier, but knock 'em dead, Philip. Very proud of you. All right. Thanks to Chip Henderson for making this lesson happen with introducing Howard to us all. What a joy having him here. Thanks to our producer, Garrett, and Fabian, our wonderful unpaid moderator. Thank you, Fabian. Can't do it without you. Actually, we could, but it would not be near as good. So glad you're here with us. Howard, thank you for being part of this.
I'm glad to be here. I really enjoyed it.
It was a joy having you. What are you gonna play for us?
You know, I'm going to play a little tune that I recorded on the Sweet and Low Down soundtrack, a Woody Allen movie that I played for a few years ago. And this is a fun tune. It's an old standard, And it was also the first tune that Sean Penn learned how to play the melody to, my most successful guitar student.
And you taught Sean Penn.
He'd never played the guitar before in his life, and I wound up teaching him how to, you know, Woody just wanted him to like look comfortable playing the guitar, but he actually learned how to play.
Beautiful. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Thank you so much, Howard. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
What a joy. Playing music is a blast. Keep working hard at it. It's well worth the effort you're putting into it. Hey, we'll see you next time.